Vitamin D, you really should know your levels of vitamin D. It's a good idea to get them measured. But if not during flu season, up to 10,000 IUs have been considered very safe. But that's way above the USRDA. So from a responsibility standpoint, I would say you should be under somebody's care if you're taking that much. But in the literature, that's been safe for most people.
And that being said, with all the panels that we've run on vitamin D in people, very rarely we see people with an optimal range of vitamin D.
Yeah, that's true. We've done probably thousands.
We've done
of these.
thousands of vitamin D tests, and almost everybody is deficient in vitamin D. Even people who get out in the sun.
So somebody who, like a child or something who's not likely to go get their vitamin D levels tested, what would be a safe preventative amount to give? And
I think the recommendations are like 2,000 IUs would be relatively safe. If I'm preventing flu for somebody, I'm going to be taking them 10,000 high. If it's a kid and they're at high risk, they're in like a nursery, I'm going to be watching their vitamin D levels, but I'm not going to probably go below 10,000 unless their D levels are really high or they have a problem with their calcium levels. So, but that's something that you don't want to mess too much with high doses unless you have some professional help. So 2,000 is good. I don't think anybody's going to argue that that's not completely safe. Up to 10 in the literature has been pretty safe. But I personally, for example, my vitamin D levels are just naturally fairly high. And so if I take 10,000, I'm going to feel really bad for myself. But most people, they won't even notice it. Yeah. They'll feel better, but they won't notice anything negative. Okay, any other? Yes?
Yeah. The news reports are saying that the H1N1, that it affects people under 25.
Tends to more, yeah, and then people over 65, there's very little effect on them.
So what are your opinions about having children, particularly under 5, vaccinated for it?
That's I think that needs to be discussed individually with, for example, the pediatrician, because you need to know your child. This is going to go into the vaccination lecture that we're going to do. Like I mentioned before, there is nothing that is appropriate for everyone. Okay, there's always two sides to the coin. So if your child seems to be in a category where they may be susceptible to some kind of neurological problem or whatever, then personally, if my child was like that, I would probably just, and there was some flu going around at school, I would just, err on the side of keeping the child away from it. And if not, then, I'd probably consider the vaccine, but I would ask for the one that does not have the, if it indeed were a deadly strain. But keep in mind also that, we don't have full disclosure necessarily from the CDC. Even the CBS News report, the CBS had tried to get disclosures from the CDC repeatedly. They had to corner them at a news conference in order to get the head of the CDC to actually, say that, okay, yeah, I'll look into it. So there's something not as forthcoming. A lot of the data that I saw that was reported on the CDC website, these children who were dying from it were severely immune compromised. They were in hospitals. They had severe problems already. There were some, so-called, healthy kids. I mean, I don't know what their backgrounds were, but you get that every flu season. You get healthy people dying. So, it's a tough call. You have to kind of weigh your own, situation with that. But if you do give your child the H1N1, I highly, highly recommend you ask for the one without the mercury in it.
Well, and if they know that mercury is dangerous, why are they continuing to put it in vaccines?
Well, everything's relative. Everything's relative. The mercury in the vaccines is very helpful as a preservative. There aren't things that work as well as mercury. There are certain things in vaccines you say, well, why would they throw aluminum in a vaccine? Well, aluminum is an adjuvant. Yes, it can cause problems, but also the vaccine won't work without it. So there are certain things that you just need to put in vaccines in order to get them to work well. And it may be that the one without the mercury doesn't work as well as the one with the mercury. We don't have the studies on any of that yet. But it's a very valid question to ask on that, and I unfortunately don't have very good answers all the time for that. And I don't think anybody does. We can only guess as to what is going on in the minds of people who are doing these things.